Today I'm going to show you the project for the second grade lesson. It's called Rubbings. And in the lesson, the students are going to learn about both the artistic and the practical uses of rubbings. So they'll learn about how artists use them to give their art visual texture. And then they'll also learn how people throughout the world and in different cultures and time periods have used rubbings to preserve certain things. So tombstones, and then one of the techniques that they'll talk about is a Japanese technique called Gyotaku, and it is an ancient technique where fishermen would put ink on the fish and then put paper on top of it and rub the paper so that they would get an accurate size and description of a fish they had caught. So we're going to kind of do our own take on that. So this is what the finished product will look like. So what you want the students to start with is they can start with this template with the fish, or they can draw their own fish outline. It's really up to you and where you think their abilities are. It can kind of depend from even the beginning of the year to the end of the year, or student to student. So if the students want the outline of the fish to start with, they can, or they can draw their own. So I'm actually going to draw my own, and they can do the fish any shape that they want. And they're going to do this on a quarter sheet of cardstock. So they do need it to be cardstock because you need the thickness of the paper for the rubbing to transfer. So like I said, it doesn't just an outline of a fish. I'm actually gonna do this long, skinny outline. So I'm gonna do this. So really simple, basically a fin and the body of the fish. And then they're gonna cut it out. So if they use the template, they would just go straight to cutting out the outline of the fish. So here's the outline of my fish. Like I said, they can do any shape or size, whatever will fit on that quarter sheet of paper. And then the next thing they're gonna do is they're gonna cut out small shapes to glue onto this outline of the fish. So I'm gonna show you my one I did previously. So I just cut out different circles, squares, triangles, and added details to the fish and glued them on. And they can layer them. They don't have to be just one layer. So like here I did the fin with some layers on top. So they're gonna wanna add an eye, a mouth, a fin, things like that. And they can stick to really simple shapes, triangles, circles, squares. They don't have to get too complicated, because at this age it can be hard for them to cut out something directly from the paper without drawing it out. They can draw shapes out if they want, but they don't need to, because they don't have to be perfect. One thing that you can use if you have these in your art closet, I know that I do, if you have hole punches, they're a great way to get them some good shapes, just circles, and they can glue those right on, and they add great texture to the fish. So I'm just gonna do a bunch of those, and they can glue those on. So those can be eyes or spots, whatever they want. So I have those. And then they're just gonna cut shapes out of this paper and glue them on. So I'm just gonna do that. You can use a glue stick, works fine here, or the glue cups, whichever you have or prefer. Okay, one thing that I did do when adding the shapes is I went ahead and let them go off the outline of the fish. And it's just easier sometimes to do that and then to go back after and cut those along the edge of the fish. You can have them do that or not worry about it. but if you think that would help, because sometimes that kind of stresses them out trying to get everything to line up perfectly. And another thing is they can have shapes coming off the fish. If they want to have, you know, a fin or something that's coming off the fish, that's fine too. So now I've put all the shapes onto my fish and they're all glued on. So now you can begin doing the crayon rubbings. So I just would encourage them to make sure they add, you know, at least an eye and a fin and some details. They don't have to add this much, but the more they add, the more interesting their fish will be. And then just give them, you might want to give them a couple sheets of copy paper, and just plain old white copy paper is what works best. And then I have some unwrapped crayons and some wrapped crayons, and I'll show you, if you have a closet with a bin full of unwrapped crayons, I know I do, then these are a perfect use. If you don't have the unwrapped crayons, the old, then using the crayons just how you normally would works just fine. So, and I'll kind of show you the difference. So then they're just going to rub the crayon over the fish. And they just need to hold the paper fairly still. And they can, if they go along the outer edge, they get a good outline. And then they get a good rubbing of the fish. And then have them do it lots of times. Like give them a couple sheets of paper and have them repeat it several times, because they'll get better at it and they'll get the idea of it. So I'll show you too. So you can just use the crayon normally, just as they were normally colored. And in fact, it gives it a little bit of a different look. It looks a little bit more filled in. So whatever you have available is fine. And you could even let them share their fish if they want. So if they wanted to end up with more than one fish, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do in your class. So have them experiment, and then they can also use more than one color for the fish. They don't have to just do the fish one color. They can experiment with making the fish multiple colors. So now I've made lots of the rubbings, and it's good because as they get going, they'll start to experiment with how much pressure they apply and using the side of the crayon rather than just the regular point of the crayon, and it gets totally different results. So let them experiment. So by giving them a few sheets of paper, they're able to really experiment and do it again and again. And then I would have them, you can stop right here. If they like this and that's what they want, that's great. But it is fun to then cut out some of these and put them on a piece of paper. So they don't have to cut out all of the ones that they did. I would recommend saying, you know, pick your favorite 3 or 4 fish and cut them out, and then we'll glue them onto a piece of colored construction paper. So have them arrange their fish on the paper, and then they can glue them on. So here's the finished product for the 2nd grade rubbings.